There's no time to rest. 3 days after completing a spectacular battle at New York Comic-Con, I'm now in California preparing to stand my ground at LA Comic-Con this week. Recovered or not, SOON SHIN must answer this call to arms. It doesn't matter that I just nearly lost my voice, that I cramped up my hamstring, and am most likely coming down with a cold. I have to stand and fight, regardless of how I feel. But I'm not here to sell out. I'm here to maintain my presence in the industry. This is a show that's going to bring in a lot of people, and it's been a couple years since I rocked it. Time to come back to Hollywood and show what it's been missing since my last visit. Joining me on the front lines this week is up-and-comer Scott Burman, the co-creator of the new satirical comic, White Savior. Turns out, Scott and I didn't grow up too far away from each other. About a year ago, he reached out to me for some direction, and over the course of time, he got his first comic done. Seeing that he was a go-getter, I offered him the rare opportunity to exhibit with me at the show this weekend. He printed up some books and has now embarked on his own creative journey. Will we achieve our goals? Well, that's what we are all about to find out on this week's episode of Onward with Onrie. Let's hit the rewind button. Last Monday, I got home from New York Comic-Con and basically slept for half the day. I started to feel my voice returning, but now I was dealing with a severe cramp in my hamstring. It turns out that while I was at New York, the amount of time I stood on concrete took a toll on that muscle. After consulting with my all-wise, all-knowing boxing coaches, I learned that I needed to start stretching those muscles in order to keep them from cramping up. Fortunately, I had some time in between New York and LA to learn these important movements and recover. Then I came across another problem. I was starting to feel very sick. If I had a couple days to actually rest and do nothing, I could kick it without any problems. Unfortunately, I needed to get ready for Baltimore Comic-Con, which is where I'm now headed as we speak. On Thursday, I departed for LA and was maybe about halfway recovered. The flight in was brutal. I was feeling weak and feverish, and I had less than 24 hours to go before battle. I realized that there was no way I was going to be 100% in time for this show, so I had to consider a few things. First off, if there's a pulse in my body, then I'm doing this show no matter what. However, I also need to make sure I don't get other people sick. I do this by making sure I have plenty of hand sanitizer with me, and that I wash my hands as often as possible. Second, I can't afford to wear out my voice, which is why it is important to have cough drops on hand at all times, and most importantly, to stay hydrated by drinking lots of water. That helped me get through the weekend without passing on germs and giving everyone I came into contact with the plague. The show itself was not easy. I believe that this is due to a number of variables pertaining to disposable income in the state of California, of which there is very little. Gas prices here are astronomical. People are spending up to nearly $6 for a single gallon of regular unleaded gas. Then you have to factor in the ridiculously high cost of living in this state. These two factors can absolutely discourage sales, and that's something I have to keep in mind. All I can do is my best this weekend, and I need to hold a strong front in order to get the job done. Now, although I may not be able to sell out of all of my inventory, I can still blast through my single issues and what remains of the first printing of Marks. If I can manage this, not only will the show be profitable, but I'll be able to hold my ground in this very volatile environment. Scott performed magnificently for his first outing on the convention front. He came with a goal to sell 100 books this weekend and managed to make it happen on his own. We worked well off each other, mostly because I think that our comics had a similar demographic. As I mentioned earlier, Scott's book is a satirical take on white savior movies, like The Great Wall and Last Samurai. Basically, the book is about a white savior who ends up getting an entire clan of samurai butchered, and now the main character of the story, a Japanese American, is thrown back in time to set things right. It's a perfect companion piece to SOON SHIN, and I was more than happy to have Scott as a booth mate. I asked Scott to join me in battle to prove a very specific point, Victory Seekers. Just because two separate comic book titles have the same demographic doesn't mean they can't both sell together. We are all in this together. We are not competitors. And furthermore, if you're willing to get out there and share your work, people will support you. You just have to put yourself out there and Scott was not afraid to do that. We are all brothers and sisters in arms in this business, and we can all thrive together. For the first 2 days, I was admittedly focused on moving SOON SHIN and wasn't working off of Scott as much. But on the third day, I managed to come around, and together we ripped through some mad volume. In the end, I achieved my goal and sold all of my single issue inventory as well as marks. I even managed to move a little over half of my graphic novel inventory. Now, contrary to what people may think, even I don't always sell out. But even when I don't sell out, that doesn't mean I didn't kick ass, because the one constant in every show I do is that I always do my very best. From start to finish, I am on and in the fight, regardless of how I may feel internally and sometimes externally. My skin is iron. Scott has a lot to be proud of. For his first show, he sold a shit ton of books. To be honest, I was around the same number for my first convention. This is a big deal. I wish Scott nothing but the very best of luck going forward. And if you want to read White Savior, it's available now. Here's the link on where you can learn more about it. All right, Victory Seekers, I'm off to do battle at Baltimore Comic-Con next week alongside my stalwart companion, Kevin Hines. We'll be setting up SOON SHIN as well as our dealing front, Hunter Killer Collectibles. We've been prepping for this show for a long time, and we have a lot riding on it. I'll get more into it on next week's episode of Onward with Onrie. So long, my friends, and until next time, onward to victory!